Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, April 6th, 18. It's a Gold Goats Guns half hour here on YouTube. I hope you all are having a great day. We got a lot to talk about today, but let's start with the basics. It's time to delete your Facebook. It's time to kill you. It's time to anonymize your cryptos. Didn't put it in the title, but didn't want to get flagged. But it's getting towards that time. And it's pretty much that simple. The liner notes for today's show have got a number of links relative to these stories. Let's talk about Sinclair Media. I know it's been in the news for a couple of days now. I haven't really dealt with it at all. But the thing from Deadspin where they identified a particular message going out across all local television stations owned by Sinclair Media, which is, really funny, ultimately, right? It just needs to, it's just a reminder of just how much our media is a full-on psyop, and that it doesn't function the way it's supposed to function. It functions purely as a means of control. And never forget that, the revolution will not be televised. It won't be televised. It won't be, it will be turned off. It's already being turned off. We're dealing with this at every level here on YouTube and on Twitter and Facebook and everything else. That when you stop to look at everything that's been happening for the last month, it's really very obvious that the three most important amendments to the Constitution are all under serious attack by the powers that be. The First Amendment, censorship. Second Amendment goes without saying. And the Fourth Amendment. Because Facebook represents an attack on privacy, a fundamental attack on privacy that we thought, which they're trying to excuse away their egregious data vacuuming practices as well. As this was voluntary, you asked for this. No, we didn't. We didn't really think that you were doing this with our data. I mean, privacy advocates have been warning about this stuff for years. I personally don't use as little of Google stuff as possible because I've always known that Google's evil. But Facebook, and the important part about Facebook, and this is something that's I've got some verbiage on in the upcoming issue of the Gold Goats and Guns monthly newsletter, my editorial for this month, where I discuss this situation and remind everybody that it's more dangerous than it always has been in the past. For this reason, it's one thing for them to be sitting there analyzing your credit card statements, analyzing your behavior online in order to try and figure out how to target what ads should go to you. And it's one thing if they're just selling you advertising. You can ignore for the most. Our brains are really good at filtering out information that we're not interested in, which is why ultimately shout-based advertising in the end has a really low conversion rate, right? Because people are really good at at excising. Our brains are actually designed to excise out information that we don't want to deal with. And so it's very hard to break through that perceptual bias. But what Facebook is doing, and what is really obvious is, and the people who are behind Facebook, right? And so we're talking now about the people who are attempting to exert political control over you, seed narratives into the marketplace, is they're using Facebook as a means by which to get real-time data as to how their messaging is working and how to trigger you into behavior that they can then ultimately use against you later on. And that's the scary part. It's one thing when the data flow is one way. They shout at you and then they measure conversions. They go, oh, we have to change the messaging. It's another thing when it's really a truly two-way system which can be adjusted in real time and then can be used as a means by which to catalog all of your reactions and save them all and be used as blackmail against you in the future. This is the fundamental danger of what Facebook's data vacuuming represents. This is why you need to kill your television. This is why you need to delete your Facebook account, or not use it. And if you do use it, only use it for the most innocuous thing imaginable, so that they can't use anything against you. Oh, wow. I mean, if anybody checks my Facebook feed over the last year and a half, they'll find out that I'm really into Star Wars Destiny. And that I like board games. Because that's all I use it for. Oh, I might have like put a couple of movie reviews that I've done on the blog on there. Well, okay, so I like genre films. Any idiot can figure out that I like genre films. They can go check my blog. It's public record. Okay, that's it. Nothing else about my Facebook feed exists. I don't even like respond to stuff on for my farm. I leave that to my wife. Because who wants to be bothered? It's getting to that point where you just have to say no. And what's truly dangerous about what Facebook has done and why their brand is now, I think, terminally tarnished, is that they've targeted and they've pissed off the very demographic that sustains the brand. People in my age bracket, who, by the way, have the highest disposable income, who are most susceptible, and who are this is what they want, right? Because everybody else the kids are on Instagram or other things, platforms I have no use for, because guess what? I'm an old guy and I don't really like social media anyway. So I have to use it. So I try to use it as sparingly as possible. All right, so that's really important. Second thing I want to talk about this morning is now so that's the first. So now that ties into the deplatforming that's going on here on YouTube and on Twitter and even Facebook and whatnot. Facebook's out there, reading and saving your messages that you use on Messenger. We use your platform and you save everything. You catalog it all for future blackmail purposes. Because, make no mistake, that's what Mark Zuckerberg wants it for. I mean, and that's what the people who are behind him want it for. They want to use it against you. They want to make sure that you don't run for public office one day. They want to make sure that you never run a public company that can challenge this, that they can't take down through some coordinated media campaign. I was going to talk about things like the caravan and Trump and the stuff that's happening over in Ukraine with them seizing the fishermen and all that stuff, because that's all really important. And guess what? Now, this morning we need to talk about Facebook and we need to talk about gun control. And I've stayed not away from gun control because, well, old goats and guns, right? There it is. Old goats and guns, right? Come on, seriously. I own guns. I love guns. Guns are important. I'm a libertarian. I think people should have the right to buy howitzers if they want. I don't know where you store your howitzer or maintain your howitzer, but if you want to buy one and you want to own one, you want to build one, you're right. It is. It's your right. Society might look askance at you, and they might not want to and people might not want to hang out with you, but you have the right to buy a howitzer. I'm not suggesting that you do buy a howitzer. So now we have the city or the town of Deerfield, Illinois, just passed a full-on gun confiscation ordinance. And they don't care about the Second Amendment. They think that they're within their legal rights to do this, which they're not. They don't have the legal right to do this. This is going to get challenged in the court. But not only was it targeting AR-15s, all semi-automatic pistols that can carry more than 10 rounds. That can carry more than 10 rounds. Not that do carry more than 10 rounds. Meaning, doesn't matter. It's not like the high-cap weapons ban from the 90s, right? Where, we all had to go through this fiction that we were only carrying 10 rounds, and the gun manufacturers could only sell guns, could only sell magazines that carry 10 rounds. And when I bought my CZ, it came with these two 10-round mags, and though the gun is capable of holding 15, I immediately went out and bought two 15-round mags for just CZ75s have been around since 1975. There are plenty of them out there, and they were relatively cheap. Or whatever, it doesn't matter. I have two of those, and I have the two 10-round mags that came with the gun. I've got 4 mags for my gun, and they're kept half full all the time. Half full. Important. Otherwise the springs are great. So, yeah, this is happening in America, but it's not about repealing the Second Amendment, right? It's all about passing sensible gun control laws. Sensible gun laws. Well, we got sensible gun laws. And we still have the violence. We might even have more violence. Maybe the sensible gun control laws didn't work in the first place. This is classic interventionist ideology, and we have to talk about this. We may go a little long today because this is important. A lot to talk about on this. So let's start with the fact that we're punishing people who have done nothing wrong, because this gun confiscation bill or ordinance carries with it a $1,000 per gun per day fine for not turning them in. Where are they going to get the information as to who has the guns? Oh, right, from those sensible gun control laws that we passed previously. The ones where we have to register that we're a gun owner, like a sex offender. Now, I know that a lot of the suburbs of Chicago are broke, and I know that most city and local governments in Illinois are broke, and that the state government of Illinois is broke. But I got news for you. A lot of the people that live there are also broke, and they're not going to do this. And they think that, they think that they're going to get, or they think this is going to be a tax revenue generation scheme. What do they think? What, they're going to shore up their muni bonds for their library that nobody uses? Give me a break. This is about a lot of things. This whole push for the Second Amendment, to repeal the Second Amendment, which, by the way, is not repealable legally. The Second Amendment, the Bill of Rights, are not repealable. They're not. Anybody who says that they are, they're not repealable. It's been settled in law. They're not repealable. They are a part of the Constitution. They are not. So anybody who says that they are, they're not. Anybody who's under the delusion that we can change that part of the Constitution, we can't. Okay, this is going to go to the Supreme Court the minute somebody gets fined for not turning in their gun, or sent to jail for not turning in their gun. The minute there's harm, it's going to go right to the courts. It's going to get appealed. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. The thing is going to get overturned, and that'll be the end of it. But it doesn't change the underlying psychodrama that's happening in this country, and the unimpeachable divide between, lack of a better terms, liberals and conservatives. These are people who believe, and this is like watching the PETA, it's like watching the YouTube shooter from earlier in the week. This woman is a vegan, animal rights activist, all of these. We were discussing this stuff with my wife this morning. She's been listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson, been discussing a lot of these arguments, these ideas, incorporating them to things that we already knew. It's just another way, and he's just his perspective is just another way of looking at a lot of the things that we had already worked out for ourselves. What's interesting about this is that about all of these things, gun control, animal rights, veganism, all of this stuff, they are all expressions of the same fundamental psychological defect. And it is a defect, as far, which is they have taken the idea of how did Camille put it this, as non-aggression, passivity, not even non-aggression, I guess it's non-aggression, peacefulness as a virtue. That these are people that believe fundamentally that This is a virtue to do no harm. And it's virtuous. It's not that it's a virtue, it is a virtue. That it's virtuous, fundamentally different. And that it's an ideal to strive for, which it's not. Okay? And because in a sense, and what they are doing is they are stating categorically that they have not accepted the fact that death is a part of life, that the world is dangerous, and that they themselves are capable of evil. Everybody's capable of evil. Everybody's fallen at a certain level. Everybody has a potential for malevolence. Everyone has to confront their shadow. The hero's journey talks about this. And this is why Star Wars is so freaking popular. It's why the stories in the Bible are so freaking primal. It's why all this stuff exists. Why we have these stories. And they've taken peacefulness as a point of virtue, as virtuousness. And it's not true. It's like the latest thing that they saw. So gun control, getting rid of the gun, is a way of denying the fact that there's evil in the world, that they're capable of performing this evil, and that they have to come to terms with the fact that it exists and they don't know how to deal with it. And so, well, we'll just ban all the guns. No, it doesn't work that way. They deny the fact that because some people are evil and will use guns poorly, that everybody else then has to be removed from the equation. Everybody else's guns have to be removed from the equation, which is nonsense. Because people do need to be able to protect themselves from those people who are willing to visit violence on another person. Period. Again, there's a fundamental difference between being aggressive and being capable of aggression, but knowing how to use it responsibly. It's like Teddy Roosevelt. Walk softly, carry a big stick. Mattis. I come in peace, but I'm begging you, with tears in my eyes, if you fuck with me, I will kill you. Vladimir Putin, how does he operate Russia? Same way. These are expressions of men who have the stick and know when and how to use the stick. And the people who have gone so loony round the bend towards animal rights, environmentalism, gun control, all of this stuff. This is what they cannot get into their head. It is not a virtue to be a victim, to open yourself up for victimhood. It's not virtuous. It actually invites the very chaos that you're so worried about. We make light of it in the gun community. Gun control is hitting your target. It's true. Why there's something like, again, my wife this morning, I really wish she would delete her Facebook account. She doesn't. But she saw on her Facebook account this morning somebody complaining, oh my God, Trump put a hunter in charge of conservation, or here in Florida, that Rick Scott, Skeletor, the governor, put a hunter in charge of conservation programs. Like, you have to point out to these people that they don't understand that hunters are the very people who are engaged in more practical, everyday conservation and management of animal population than anybody else in the society. And it only makes sense. Deer are a nuisance. If you've ever lived in a place, well, I do, they're a nuisance. They carry disease. They eat your gardens. They make it impossible for you to grow food. You have to get a dog or a gun or both. Hunters manage this population. Produce food for it. They produce food. They're skilled. Only at land management, but at hunting. And I fundamentally believe that people who are against guns don't like the fact that there are people out there who are more skilled with those weapons than they are. Because they've taken it into their idea that being a victim ultimately is virtuous. It's insanity. And it shows a level of adolescence, immaturity, that is not incurable, but it shouldn't have any place in our politics. And unfortunately, it does. So this is not going to stop. Okay? The people who have this in their heads are not going to change. This is their ideology. This is who they are. They're on that side of the culture war. And when you're acting ideologically from that, then you don't see the harm that your actions cause. No one wants to be the villain. As my good Marxist friend Andy tells me all the time, quotes John Barth at me, man can do no wrong. You're right. From the man's perspective, he personally can do no wrong. That's what makes men villains. The villains never see themselves as the problem. The Board of Trustees of Deerfield, Illinois are not going to see themselves as the problem when they ban guns, gun violence in their town goes up, and they'll blame the victims. They'll blame the people. They'll blame the victims of this bad law by saying you didn't support us this gun ban sufficiently enough, so now we have to go even farther and we need to get rid of all the guns. We tried to leave you and we tried to trust you with 10-22s and with 22 bolt action rifles and double barrel shotguns, but that's not good enough. We now have to take everything from you because you're bad people. Because you didn't support our ideas enough. They do this every time they create an intervention into the marketplace. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. Abortion, the border, immigration, gun control, it doesn't matter. All the arguments are always the same from those who are willing to intervene in the lives of other people. Obviously, it's the Democrats, the libs, always blame the conservatives for not going far enough. If we had just banned more guns, it would have been okay. Sensible gun control laws. That's all we're asking for until they come and say, well, we want to repeal the Second Amendment now. Because we tried this other stuff. Don't you realize we tried this? It's not working. We need to now do something else. No. You need to step back and realize that banning the guns, we were right all along. Banning the guns isn't going to stop anything. We need to go look at the real source of the problem that created the violence and not just look at the end result, which is the violence itself. But again, we're talking about people who are fundamentally believe in postmodern Marxism, whether they understand it intellectually or not, and therefore it's a causeless universe. Cause and effect doesn't matter. What came before doesn't matter. We have this problem now and we need to deal with it now. It's a causeless universe. The universe is random. Word definitions are meaningless because our identity is meaningless because nothing actually means anything because the whole fucking the whole universe is absurd and our existence is absurd. Don't you understand? So therefore, we should just do whatever we want. I'm like, oh, you just want to destroy everybody around you who's not you. Again, hell is other people. I did a YouTube on this a couple of weeks ago, talking about all of this. Hell is not other people. Hell is people who are unwilling to admit they are wrong. These people are villains. Don't see themselves as villains, but they're villains. Which brings me into the United Kingdom. Now, last time I was on, I started talking about the after effects and what the real story was. I was just kind of vamping when we were on Wednesday on what I thought the real story was behind why the Brits went crazy over the poisoning of a former Russian double agent, Sergei Skripal, and his daughter Yulia. And I said, oh. And that was right after we heard from the people at Porton Down, the military chemical weapons facility, research facility, right down the road from where these two people were found unconscious on a park bench, apparently. Who are now, by the way, fine. Deadliest nerve agent in the world. 1,000 times more powerful than VX nerve gas. They're fine. They were on Russian TV last night. But finally put it all together last night. After I got off YouTube and I was sitting there chatting with my business partner and my good friend, and we were talking about all this. And he's been under the assumption that the Brits are the friggin' enemy for you. And I said, no, this actually, I've got it now. This is all a big ploy to destroy the Theresa May government, which they weren't able to get done through the election, the snap election last. Let me connect the dots for you. Governments fail when the people lose confidence in them. Want to destroy confidence in your leadership? Well, you undermine it at every turn. This is what they're trying to do with Donald Trump. Constantly saying that he's a criminal and that he has sex with porn stars and he's all these things. He's a puppet for Putin and all this. Just let's throw shade on the guy until eventually people just go, yeah, he's just the most horrible person imaginable. Imagine Theresa May, who I don't think is involved, I don't think she's deep state. I think she's like Nancy Pelosi. Like Halsey and I agree on this. She's much more similar to Nancy Pelosi, which is that she wields power. She's allowed to wield power, but she's not actually privy to the actual strategy. So her job is just to implement strategy. Same thing with Schumer. I think they're both puppets. I think they're both the implementers of whatever the grand strategy is, and they're not told what the actual strategy is. It's just their job to get it done, right? They're not actually at the really important meetings, right? They're not part of that club. Neither is Boris Johnson. Neither is Theresa May. Neither is Gavin Williamson, the defense secretary. None of these people. They're all bozos. They're all out there they're all the patsies to take the fall for this. So May was put in power to scuttle Brexit by being a weak leader. I call her the gypsum lady as opposed to the Iron Lady, Maggie Thatcher. She was placed in power to be weak because she was kind of a Remainer. She's who she is. She can be easily manipulable. So let's just throw it out here. MI6 poisons these two people on a park bench. Hands Theresa May and Boris Johnson via Porton Down a statement saying absolutely it was the Russians. They're the experts. This is who people like May and Johnson would believe. What these people are there for is to believe this stuff. Right? And so they go to the press. They go to Parliament. They go to the world leaders with this. This obviously false story. But they're convinced of it because they've been given what they think is incontrovertible proof. You couldn't sell this to the however many countries expelled diplomats. You couldn't sell this if you didn't believe it. Not possible. They couldn't have been in on this. Makes perfect sense. So they go and they do this and they create the biggest diplomatic incident of the last 100 years over this. And right when everything has reached its peak, Porton Down comes out and says, no, we're not really sure that it was the Russians after all. We never said that. Boris Johnson's got to take tweets down. This one's got to take that. He's trying to blame an undersecretary who told him all this crap. Everybody's got egg on their face now. May, Boris Johnson calls for their jobs are thick as thin, are just rising. While all this is going on, Theresa May's lead negotiators fundamentally giving away the keys to Brexit, setting the stage in negotiations so that when her government falls and Labour moves in, and it will not be Jeremy Corbyn who leads Labour against Theresa May, because he's actually been the only responsible British politician the entire time saying, wait, hold on, this doesn't seem right. Why would Russia do this? Let's get the evidence. And he's being criticized and crucified in the British press for this. Of course. No, it's not a move to put Corbyn in power. It's a way to actually marginalize him further and remove him from, user 13 asked me whether that's the case. No, it's to remove him from Labour's leadership after he wins the snap election and they move a Tony Blair clone in. He was never going to be prime minister. Never. Jeremy Corbyn is Bernie Sanders. He's never going to be president. They'll let him run and win, and then they'll destroy him and put a Tony Blair clone in. That was the plan last year. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Theresa May calls a snap election, is convinced to call a snap election, thinking that she's going to be able to, solidify her power. And then all of a sudden, there's terror attacks all over London. She's being lambasted in the press, the whole 9 yards. Every time she comes out to open her mouth, it's completely misinterpreted, and she's destroyed in the press and everything else in order to try and get Labour to win. Unfortunately, Labour's brand is so damaged, especially with the Scots, that the DUP was able to, the Northern Unionist Party was able to take enough of the vote to allow May to cobble together a coalition, a weak coalition. Just barely. One seat? So, oh no, this is all about taking down the May government. Now, take that one step further. That'll be the third election in 3 years. Parliament in Britain. She gets a vote of no confidence over this. Take her down. Even if not, even if she hangs on the power, she's gonna have to give in on every. She's gonna have to give back to the EU after having them put, after throwing egg on their face over this incident, creating a diplomatic row with Russia over nothing, over a lie. She's gonna have to hand everything over on Brexit to her. It'll just be another step along the way to civil war in Britain. It's going to take years yet for this to happen, but we're going to look back on this and say, yeah, this could have easily been the inciting incident, the fall of the May government, the betrayal of Brexit. The Scots will start pushing really push for a second referendum. At this time, it'll stick. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are going to happen here as a fallout from this, because the people want Brexit. It's more popular now than when they voted for it. They're now comfortable with the idea of leaving the EU. And then she's going to betray it because the elites on Downing Street and in the City of London don't want it, because the English ruling class doesn't want it. This is the end of the British Empire. This is truly what the end of an empire looks like. They're already done, but the Brits still think they're important because they still have the City of London. They still have all the financial services infrastructure, which brings in a tremendous amount of money, prestige, and power to the country. But that's it. The rest of the country is nothing. It's like Barcelona in Spain. Without Barcelona, Spain is a third world country. So, seriously, guys, this is what this is about. Oh, and kicking the Russians out of the European financial system in order to keep them from being able to pay their contractors and their creditors over the Nord Stream pipeline. That's a bonus. That's just bonus stuff. Empowering Ukraine, bonus. None of that stuff matters. The big one is to get rid of the May government. And that's what's coming. If not in name, then in by fact. Right. And now, this is a country that is tearing itself apart. This is a country so suffused with toxic totalitarianism that the police will not arrest gang raping Muslims over fear of looking like racists. Instead, they put the opposition parties leaders in jail. England's a police state. Has been for a long time, guys. And tie the whole thing up. What do you think they're trying to do here by attacking bodily the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments? Because the biggest thing stopping a full-on police state in this country is the Second Amendment. People in Britain don't have the right to free speech. They don't have a right to defend themselves. They have a right to privacy. They don't have any natural rights. Well, I mean, they do, but they don't have them as a function of constitutional law. They're subjects. They're property. Never forget that. All right, I'm a little bit over. This was fun. Check out the blog over at goldgoatsandguns.com. If you like what you heard today, give a like, give a subscribe. Really would appreciate it. We'll be back on in a couple of days, maybe Sunday. Sunday, maybe Monday, probably Sunday. We'll be on Periscope tonight at 9 o'clock with my homies. And we will be discussing probably a lot of this stuff and most likely the seizure of the fishing ship Nord off the coast of Crimea by Ukraine as yet another ridiculous provocation to get Russia to fire first in World War III. Notice how Putin hasn't taken the bait yet. And probably won't. Y'all take care. You have a great afternoon. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.